Welcome to Cultivate the Ordinary podcast, curious conversations for the anxious, frustrated, and bored. I'm Travis.
And I'm Jessie. So often we're held captive by screens, schedules, and media that's mind-numbing and polarizing. This leaves us seeing dimly through a fog. We want to spark more imagination and a better awareness of God's presence in the everyday.
Join us on a fun journey of discovery and curiosity as we look at the ordinary through the lenses of joy, wonder, beauty, and hope. Well, great to be back on the podcast with my lovely wife, Jessie.
Hey.
Yeah. So it's summer and we're off to a wild, busy start like I'm sure a lot of you guys are, and looking forward to summer trips and getaways and all of that good stuff. So yeah, today we're going to talk about kind of helping people find wholeness and healing in their stories and in their journeys, in our journeys. And really, I'm going to really be talking, kind of interviewing Jess. And she's done a lot of work in this, is a coach for, what's your coach title?
Kind of narrowed it down to more resilience coaching.
Resilience coaching. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So she works a lot with individuals and has worked some with couples as well.
Yeah.
So, yep, has done a lot on working through trauma and all kinds of stuff. So we'll unpack some of that. It's also going to be really practical. Try to always be, this is never too high level that we can't apply it to our lives. So, yeah. So we're doing all right?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am really exhausted. Working on putting a fence up on the side of a little pool we're putting up, and it's like 90 here in South Carolina, which like summer's full blown, and it's like a wet, panting dog's breath of humidity in your face all day.
Yeah,
So,
but like 2 days ago, we were like, it feels so nice.
yeah.
And now you're out
Changes
in
quick.
it working.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. It's a whole different ballgame. So, yeah.
So what's, I know that it's not all been work. We've been having some times of rest and soul care. Where do you think you're finding inspiration lately?
So, for me, gosh, I love reading and being outside and doing active things, but really been getting more into poetry the last year or so. When I wrote the book Shiny Eyes, there was a quote that I quoted. So for me, it was a secondhand source or whatever, but I saw it in something else. But I love this so much, and it actually even applies to our episode today. But so it basically says, the poet is Thomas McGrath, and he said, "How could I have come so far and always on such dark trails? I must have traveled by the light shining from the faces of all those I've loved." Mm. So I've loved that so much. And then I was like, the other day, I was like, that guy that said that, I want to find out more about him or what else he wrote. Well, I find out he's from my home state of North Dakota, was a pretty famous poet, but kind of overlooked, sounds like, historically, just, comparison to Whitman or others. But so I picked up one of his books and just read a couple lines of just, gosh, I mean, when you can write like this, it's just unbelievable. But here's one he says about the summer. He says, "The long wound of the summer stitched by cicadas." And then, and that's really relevant too.
In the Midwest, for sure.
Yeah. And then here's another one. "Through the fog, the gulls carry the sea inland." So, and those are just short little 3-line things, but of course he does a lot of other writing. Writes a lot on, death and war and, kind of a lot of dark stuff as well. But yeah, just a great, so yeah.
So this has been your slow down time.
Slow down time,
Very
yep.
Inspiring.
Mm-hmm, yep.
Cool.
So yeah, words are a big thing for me, and I get inspiration through that. So, well, let's just kind of dig right into our episode today. I think about you so your birthday's coming up in July, and right on the 4th, which I always say is oh so fitting because you're a firecracker. I always look at you as someone that doesn't really play by the rules. You see the best in everyone, and you make the world more beautiful simply by waking up each day.
Mm.
Just
You're so sweet.
that's worth. Maybe I get out of kitchen chores tonight. But you'll selflessly do anything for anyone, and then this is my favorite. And then when you're marveling at Jessie, at her grace and gentleness, she'll blindside you with a bone-jarring tackle and flag football when it's illegal.
Well,
That's what I remember back in the day.
That was when we were dating.
When we were dating and playing flag football, and you would tackle people.
Well,
but
it's not just in flag football.
So, anyway, so you've always been someone who has a gift of helping people and helping them believe in themselves and see hope. When, like, how far back as a kid, or where did this go to where you found yourself helping others, having this gift? Like, I picture you didn't have a lemonade stand, but had like maybe a little counseling stand, and
I actually did have a lemonade
your neighbor
stand.
kids are coming home paying little co-pays. Like, here's a quarter to sit down. And
well, okay, so like as a kid, my mom always laughs about how when we moved to Kansas City, Missouri, there wasn't like a welcome wagon for us. Like, I went around to everybody's houses and welcomed myself to the neighborhood and told them, all about us. And I just wanted to know people. I've always really just wanted to get to know people quickly and go deep fast. And I have always just had a desire to kind of make things beautiful, like, so whether it's art or, creating community or something like that, I kind of have this sense of like what might be missing or lacking, and I'm like eager to try to like fill that in and fix that, and that has its downsides too, but that's kind of me as a kid. I was just always trying to connect people, bring people together, make things better,
right.
And I was always attracted to people who were hurting, and like a lot of brokenness, a lot of friendships that came from really broken homes and things like that.
Well, I like you said that of the art, and then kind of your imagination for the possibility, not just of a blank canvas. But I've kind of described before how I've seen you where that gift of, and really a lot of it's hope, I think, but just that you see in people's lives, maybe the things that they've lost or forgotten or no longer see as possible, or think that they can't be redeemed. And it's like, I just have seen where you've come together with people, and it's like you're painting with them or teaching them to paint again on their canvas, brushstrokes of beauty. And that's such a gift. And it's beautiful that you're an artist, but you're also an artist over relationships.
Yeah. Well, I think it's natural that like people want to try to make what they need. So like as a pretty sensitive person myself, like I desire those types of things to be safe spaces or whatever for myself, that's naturally just what I want to do for other people. And I mean, I've always been pretty introspective and empathetic, that can lean into codependency, like as a kid, and just wanting people to like me too. But it definitely has been something that has just been a pattern all throughout my life.
Yeah. Well, then what about sort of into adulthood? How is that helping people with self-awareness? How has that kind of taken shape and evolved in your time with people through the years?
I was thinking about even in my early 20s when you and I first got married, and we just had Joelle, so she was a baby. I opened a home daycare, and I found myself just even that sort of home business or whatever became like a place where the single moms whose kids I watched over that 5-year or so period of time, that became just a ministry or whatever, just any place of kind of helping beyond just watching their kids. Like I would sit for sometimes hours after school, so to speak, and, just listen to what was going on, and just wait for those opportunities to kind of speak some hope into the situation if I felt like I could, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that very strongly, even in my 20s. And then, you know, obviously you and I have gotten into foster care. We worked at a children's home and, you know, advocating for adoption and awareness of those types of needs and kids that are hurting.
It also, as I've been married to you, watched you with others, you know, you're someone that's not afraid of big things in people's stories that scare other people. Like, I feel like there's other people that come across something that's, oh man, I don't know how, you know, and of course some things are too big for any of us to just tackle, but I feel like for some of us, it's like there's an intimidation of, oh man, you just shared that. Now what do I do? Or how do, you know, but feels like you've always had a big capacity.
Yeah.
Maybe even before you had all the tools to just.
Yes, I think that's important to note that it was just like, I think for most of my life, I would always sit there with people in their pain. Like if they were talking about something really hard or, you know, I mean, like, growing up, just how many friends that I was close with that were like abused and things like that, and just always just like absorbing so much of their pain and just always being right there, not shying away from it. But I did not have the tools to take care of myself through those experiences. And, you know, it wasn't until like my 30s that I realized, okay, the toll that it takes to like absorb so much and always be there for others, but not even care for myself, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and then kind of going even further, more recent, you really gotten more into trauma awareness and that whole thing. And I know that's kind of in the conversation much more for everybody now. At least I think everybody knows, they hear that, and we don't just think like, you know, like hospital wounds or something. Trauma, you know, has kind of entered the vernacular of anyone really, of just at least.
You're right. Yeah, just culturally, like there's just a more of an awareness that trauma isn't just like PTSD from war, that it is a complex thing, and that it is more of what happens inside of you, not just what happened to you, and that our nervous systems and, you know, memories and emotions, all that's just wrapped up in our experience of difficult things that overwhelm our system. So, you know, my first exposure to like all the trauma awareness stuff was working at the children's home and working with kids who come from trauma. And then, you know, later really kind of translating that to adults who never healed trauma. Because my heart has always been, you know, thinking of biological parents whose kids are in foster care, and many of them have their own traumas. They have their own abuses, things that they never got help for, and so they don't have the tools. I mean, it doesn't excuse the things that the neglect or things with their own kids, but I have a strong compassion to say, how do they change and become better parents if they don't have the tools to address their own trauma? And so I started to just really dig into understanding what it looks like for these biological families to grow in self-awareness and grow in resilience so that they can actually complete treatment plans and consistently be better parents for the kids.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess after learning more just about trauma in general, I mean, during that season, I think, what was it, 2019, we had Dakota. During my pregnancy, I had sciatic pain and a lot of like physical issues, and I just assumed after I gave birth that I would be pain-free because it was pregnancy related. And, you know, a year later, I still was struggling with that, and just started to realize how much stress and overwhelm and not slowing down and not paying attention to my own inner world and emotions, like, was taking its toll on my body. So, yeah, I mean, we we're in a season of just stress. You know, we're caring for your dad and your brother, and Dakota was not sleeping. He was an incredibly sensory sensitive baby that just had, a lot of needs, feeding issues and things like that. And so it was a hard first year after he was born. And I think, my physical, like, repressing of emotions, like, it showed up in physical ways. So, some people know the book, The Body Keeps the Score. That's just the ways that our sensations in our body and holding muscle tension and blood flow changes and all that stuff can affect, we get health related issues and physical symptoms when we don't deal with what's really going on in our hearts and minds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how the body, the brain, the neurochemistry and how all that works together and the connection there. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that season, you and I learned some about Enneagram and this personality system to help us just unpack a mutual language for what is going on in our internal world, what are our motivations, like why do we have conflicts the way that we do, how do we think about things differently. And that was just a very helpful tool for just overall self-awareness. But then it even helped at times to look at, okay, where are the wounds, which gets at that idea of trauma awareness. And these are the places that were the hardest for me in my way of relating to experiences in this world and stuff. And
right.
So the more I became aware, the more I was like, okay, I can name these things as things that need healing.
Yeah. Have language for it. So we began doing some relationship work together. Like meaning especially our relationship.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah, we needed it after that season.
Yeah. And everyone does. Everyone needs, like, marriage is work. Relationships are all work. And it's good work. It's worthy work, but it's work. So, so we attended a few marriage retreats back starting in maybe 2019 was,
Yeah, I think it was 2019 and 2020 were the two.
Yeah. And so we went to a Dan Allender conference in Tennessee, and then we went to a marriage conference or retreat in Colorado. And so those were both really powerful. Also the backdrops of where they were, it was a lot of fun too. So, and that's a big part of, when you get to do a retreat, if you can go somewhere too, where there's also that time to unwind and go, see places. So, but yeah, it was just like, I remember that for me, one of them just was a takeaway that I remember. And sometimes I think, like, you go to these and it's just like, oh man, you're feeling zoned out or whatever. And, but it's, if you can come away with one thing even that you can use as a tool or a reminder, and that's worth it right there. Like, and so for me, I remember the one in Colorado with, what was his name again? Adam Young. Okay. And it was about attunement, or not about that, but it was, one of the segments he talked about attunement. That's a big thing. And so for me, I barely knew what that was. Like attunement sounds like tuning a piano or some kind of, but what was so helpful of that was that, as a dad, but even as a spouse, like, we are going to mess up. I mess up a lot. I have a gut reactive instinct to, so often I feel like it's like I respond to things so quickly sometimes that I literally have not even thought it. And so what can happen is, if I'm stressed especially or whatever, I'm not in a good place to hear something from one of the kids or whatever, and then I can just have a response that's intense or, and it's not really compassionate or thinking about like what they're dealing with. And then I'm realizing, wow, I hurt you in my response. Like I wasn't listening as well as what you needed, and maybe what I said wasn't very nice or whatever. And his great reminder was with attunement that it's not, I mean, of course we want to strive to be more compassionate, not have those moments as much, be more aware, self-aware. But even then we're still gonna, mess up and kind of have regretful things that we might have said. So but his thing was, it's all about attunement. It's all about repair. So that's the key, is knowing that when that happens, I have the ability, I have this way to go and repair, to sit down and say, hey, I'm sorry for what I said. And so I want to say it now in a different way. And then so often my takeaway with my kids has been, man, they've responded so well to that. It's just like, yeah, I forgive you, Dad. Plus it's modeling humility to ask for forgiveness. So I just, that for me, that one thing, attunement and being aware of repair when you know.
Yeah. When we talk a lot about just like this relationship work, so much of it has to do with learning about attachment and that need for connection in relationships. Children do, but like as adults in marriage, like we do also. And during these like stressful times, like during that season we talked about, it was sort of this question of like, I'm struggling. Are you there for me? And like that question we're both asking is, are you there? And I think about Sue Johnson. She's a leader in attachment research and work with couples. But the acronym ARE just really means like, are you accessible? Are you responsive? And are you engaged? And so that goes along with that repair that you were talking about. When we want to try to change those patterns, a lot of that was our work in that time, is how do we become more accessible to each other, more responsive and more engaged with each other's feelings, each other's needs, and so on. So that was a really good kind of primer during that time, like learning self-awareness and learning relationship dynamic stuff. Up to like 2021, I would say. And you and I went through the Enneagram and marriage certification. Both of us are certified marriage coaches. And, I think learning about soul care and us eventually going to these retreats was just this added layer of, it's not just about constantly working. It's not just constantly adding more to the to-do lists of how to better improve ourselves and our relationships. But I mean, how do you fuse this with our faith and with God, and just being slow and present and listening to how He is nudging us to be formed and shaped into new creations?
Yeah. So when it comes to relationships, I mean, one of the ways I guess we've tried to work on this, and then in the broader context of a community around us, we've certainly been in community groups through church through the years that I really feel like we've, just with the peers in that and kind of a common heart and desire to be really real and vulnerable and know that this is safe. It's felt like it's a safe space to do that. I think we've really come from that historically, in by God's grace as a gift. We've been in those settings. So I think we've had some confidence to bring that, even into other places and with other people. And so we, in around 2022, I think, started kind of a small marriage group called...
We don't have a name for it. It's just our marriage group.
Okay. So it's just a minute. So, I couldn't remember if we said something like...
We didn't name it.
But the whole idea was just, getting together about once a month with two other couples and just hanging out, having a good night, good food, and just chilling. But being intentional, whether it's something we're working on through like a book or some kind of resource, using the Enneagram sometimes, to, have maybe a topic, but then just a space to process maybe an argument, or whatever that was. So,
well, and that's been one of the biggest ways that I feel like you and I both really solidify what we've learned and in all this, like, all these patterns, and just trying to become better in a lot of areas, whether it's parenting or marriage or just self-awareness, is being able to almost like reteach it to a group of people. It's like that has been helpful for me. I know not everybody's wired that way, but I enjoy sharing the things that I'm learning. It helps me constantly do it, like in my own life. Like that's been really good.
Right. Yeah. No, I think there's research that says, there is something to teaching something you've learned really reinforces your understanding. So moving forward kind of in this conversation, you started a program. You developed a program called Guided Pace. Take us into that story, how it developed and what that's about. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I think it was in 2021. After all this learning and just getting really excited, I mean, I feel like we got through that season of stress, and I had handles for so much of these things that I had learned that have helped me. And then all the passion for trauma awareness and, biological families, and wanting to see hope for other adults who are struggling, and, find my place to kind of share this stuff. And I approached the leader of a pretty large, like, state umbrella organization that she's the director, and just kind of shared the dream I had about adding this self-awareness piece to parent classes for parents who are going through the process to kind of complete treatment plans and have their kids come back home that are in foster care. And she saw an open door for a grant for non-custodial parents. So, like, probably predominantly dads, and, a way to add this to resources statewide for them to kind of go through the steps of what it looks like to better equip themselves as parents. And got so excited and kind of recruited a handful of different friends to help me do videos, and I wrote the curriculum, and it was just 3 months of just a busy frenzy of creating. And I had just launched the website for Guided Pace along with the grant application, alongside several other organizations that were part of this grant. And I was under the impression that it was very likely we were going to win it. So I was ready to, like, hire people and, like, do this whole thing. And found out, I think it was like in July, that the grant fell through, that it was given to a different organization. And I just was like, I did not know what to do. I was kind of blindsided. I don't think I would have ever created the program had it not been for that grant opportunity. So, in hindsight, I think God knew that that's what it would take for me to create this. And so it took me about 2 months to catch my breath and just kind of figure out, okay, what does this even mean? Where do I go from here? And sort of just relaunched the website with the language more of just individual and relationship coaching. And the program itself is versatile for parents, for individuals. Like, it's just for anybody who wants to grow in self-awareness, understand their patterns, and set goals for changing those patterns and do them regularly, incrementally. I know we've talked about in the past the Atomic Habits book and how habit stacking and things like that, So my coaching has been largely just about walking alongside people and seeing those, like, micro changes and kind of cheerleading them on that there is hope that we can change.
Yeah, it was really cool to just see that whole thing. And like you said, if it weren't for the opportunity, you probably wouldn't have put the time and energy into conceptualize and kind of hit play on working all that stuff. And it was just impressive to watch you recording videos and basically making a course just that didn't exist. I mean, back to, again, creating things that aren't there, being an artist. But so, yeah, that was a really amazing thing. It seems like God's redeemed in a way that maybe, you still haven't seen the finality of where it's going. So, and then kind of as that sort of in part of that story, then it led to you getting into coaching. So, so tell people, because I think there can be confusion. Okay, there's therapy, counseling, coaching, all these different. So, we're not talking soccer coach here. It's like
right.
So. Tell us, kind of define coaching, and then what's that been like for you to work with clients in some cases over a year?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
No, it's been really rewarding and just fun to start these new, coaching is more like friendship, like therapy and counseling is a different sort of relationship. I don't go to the depths of people's trauma, even though I do help kind of nudge the ideas of trauma and what trauma does to the body, but it's a lot of focusing on what's happening right now. So like, are you dysregulated? Okay, what's something we can do to help you find your footing to make progress forward? Things like that. I do a lot of assessments. I really like, depending on what the client is looking for, it could be personality assessments, understanding attachment styles, learning whether they more frequently are in a sympathetic state or more frequently in a dorsal state, which just baseline, very simple. Sympathetic is just it could be frustrated or anxious a lot of the time. Either of those are more of a mobilization, right? Like I have to do something. Whereas dorsal state, and these are nervous system states, it's just the science words, it is kind of the shutdown, the numb, that there's nothing I can do. So immobilization. And so depending on where people are at is how I would coach them, So, and then also if it's more for relationships, like for their marriage or partnership, understanding love styles, that's important. So the old 5 love languages is something people are familiar with, but now Truity has come out with the 7 love styles, which we could put a link in the show notes or whatever. But that's a really interesting one, just because the ways that we need connection and experience love, it's just different for everybody, and we can kind of meet at those points. So yeah, my style, really the whole thing, PACE, the word PACE, PACE, is pattern, awareness, connection, and engagement. And that's what that's about. And so we walk through becoming more aware of all the patterns, whether it's personality or otherwise, and making those connections, connecting to our heart and our emotions, connecting to other people, and then engagement being like, okay, what are some real practical tools? What can we do about it? Yeah.
Well, and a big part of that, as you brought in sort of, historic contemplative Christian soul care practices that helps us slow down, assess, where am I at in today, in the crazy, spinning, hectic day. Where am I? Ground myself, anchor myself. Getting more awareness of ourselves, and then an awareness of where is God in relation to me today. Do I feel His presence, His nearness? Am I taking time to pray, to seek His voice, all that stuff. So
that's been something I think the last year. I created the Guided Pace program, 3 years ago. This last year, I've really I created the Resilient Wholeness program. Last fall launched that, and then did another round of women online. I do Zoom this spring, and that has infused the contemplative Christian approach with the pattern awareness, connection, engagement. And so taking those things, bringing them together, we look at some scriptures, we look at poetry, we look at some artwork even, and just anything that brings you into the present moment to just kind of feel grounded, like Travis said, in where you are now. You get out of your head, you get out of the spinning what ifs of your stress and the situation that overwhelms you, and you find goodness. You start hunting for the moments of goodness throughout your week, and being able to share that together in a group is really powerful. Because I could do that with individuals, which I do sometimes, but when you have that group experience for the contemplation and stuff, it's really, it's beautiful.
It's cool. Well, I know that I've grown in self-awareness. Still feel like a baby, but you've helped me grow in understanding more of like what my body's telling you, and in terms of stress, what I'm feeling.
I love how you said what your body's telling me.
Because
I see it before you do. Sometimes.
What my body's telling you, or okay, so, well, what's something my body like? Is there an example that you see before I?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Like when we're, it's been a nonstop day, and you've been working without rest, and maybe not as aware that you've just been going. You tend to be in that sympathetic state, the mobilization, that I have to do something, I have to quickly respond to everything with that gut response. And so when that's going on, like sometimes I'll just like put my hand on your shoulder or something, and I'm just like, okay, will you just take a deep breath?
Will you just leave the room and then come back?
That would be easier, but I want you to be aware of your heightened state and just take a deep breath and just be here for a second and just like take a pause, and don't just keep moving. Right. Don't just keep going, because that grinding eventually turns into an overreaction with someone, whether it's me or the kids or whatever. And so, I think that's something, when you have really hard days, just breathing.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to say, like, if you're listening and you can relate to being a body type, meaning, you're just kind of go. You're just your body, your movement, motion, doing. Those of us, I mean, we all need to take time to breathe, but that's something I'm like 44 and I'm being told to breathe. It's just like because what you're saying is when we're with so much frenetic energy movement, not taking deep breaths, our brain really isn't even getting a full load of oxygen to think clearly, to have, I guess, endorphins to...
Well, the science of it is just when you're in more of a survival state, your blood oxygen levels are lower, and because you're not breathing as fully and deeply. So all of your energy is going to your extremities for fight or flight. You're like ready. That's why muscle tension. That's why people who are just in that state all the time, you have tense shoulders and your back hurts, and and not to discount like true, like just big injuries that people have sustained, but when you just have chronic pain from just tightness and things like that, I mean, breath work is huge. Like it changes just the way that your brain functions to make you just feel safe, because it reminds you and your physical state that you are safe, that you don't have to defend yourself against all the things that are coming at you.
And I've noticed it's that, and it's just, it brings you to just being present. Like I'm actually just focusing on just sitting here, taking deep breaths, just chilling, and then it's like, okay, I'm actually more aware even of my surroundings, and like maybe more aware of what I'm feeling inside, or
Well, so. And a lot of therapists and counselors and things like that use tools where it's like 5 senses: something you can see, something you can hear, something you can taste, touch, smell. Like that's that grounding. I'm here now. I mean, even just shaking your arms and things like that, you're expelling some of that like tension. And I think in the West, we are just so used to information and ideas and conclusions, and like that's the answer to everything. whether you're in the church or whether you're not, the value in the Western world is the mind, the head. And we've forgotten that there is a value to kind of befriending, I guess, your body, and that the body's not bad. Like the body is just part of all that God created. It's part of your soul, and you are a whole person, not just a head.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well said. Anything else you want to add about just healing and being aware of body and stress? Or, I mean, kind of described it pretty well of just why it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in essence too, just that the emotions are tied also to the bodily experience, and that paying attention to the body also helps you name your emotions, and that gives you also valuable information for shifting patterns and trying to get unstuck.
Yeah. Okay, so as we get to round the last turn here to the finish line, what would you say to someone who's stuck and has dysfunctional patterns? Maybe they feel out of control or a little hopeless. I mean, where do they start? What do they need to? What's your first words to that?
That there is hope and that people absolutely can change. I think to me, it's been just beautiful just being able to study the science of like neuroscience and how we are constantly changing. We're constantly able to relearn new patterns, and that our God is a God of renewing and renewal. And so even when things seem like they're dying or dead, it could be relationally, or it could be your own hope or your own parts of your story, things like that I believe, and then I've seen it time and time again, which you pay attention to, there goes your life. And that if you focus on the ways that God is renewing and bringing new types of goodness and turning you into who He created you to be, there is always hope. We do have to participate. Yeah. Like it's not sitting back and just praying that God come do it all. I mean, He could.
And He does.
Absolutely, He could. And, there are times He does, but in so many cases He wants us to meet Him in the process. And
yeah, and maybe it's part of the process is moving forward, and then someone else He brings to you in the process or meets you, but
well, and because He's a triune God, right? Father, Son, and Spirit, this relationship between the three, like He created us to be relational. So this healing of patterns doesn't happen as an island by yourself. Like that's why we have our marriage group. That's why I have, other friends and my women's group with Resilient Wholeness, and you and I talk about our patterns together is because we are relational and we need each other to see ourselves clearly and to see what needs to change also.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so where do we find more about your work and your program?
Yeah, if anybody wants to engage, you can email us. I can put that in the show notes, or go to guidedpace.com, and I have I have a page about my coaching. We have a page about soul care. Kind of just it outlines the approach, things like that. So happy to do a discovery call with anybody free of charge. Usually do that just to make sure it's a good fit for all of us, and that coaching is actually what's needed, because in some cases somebody needs something else. So those would be the places. I don't, I use my primary Facebook page mostly for my sharing of things and our work. And I lastly wanted to share too, that if people are listening and, you kind of silently walk through the pain and the struggle of things in life, and there's such a stigma around mental health and reaching out for sort of help with even just small things that you think you should be able to handle. I've been there. I know what it's like to silently and quietly be just struggling with stuff and wanting to see things change and feel better. But we're not meant to go it alone. There really is no shame at all in having a conversation with what it might look like to seek help. So,
yeah, it's great. All right, I'm going to take you out with a very short poem from Thomas McGrath, and this is called Machado. Sounds like an ice cream flavor or something, but
it does. Gelato.
Sorry, Thomas, I maybe butchered that, but this is kind of a witty thing he says about sailors. Poor and desperate men invented 4 things that are useful at sea: sails, rudders, oars, and the fear of drowning. I hope that's...
Not sure what that has to do with this podcast.
We are ending
nice.
it there, and just hope you have a great summer and doing some fun stuff and having some adventures with your families. All right, until next time. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I hope you found something helpful, hopeful, or thought-provoking. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to any resources mentioned in the podcast. And we also have links in the notes for our own resources to check out. We would really love to hear from you. And we're also really grateful for your support by sharing the podcast episodes with your friends and family and leaving a rating and review. May we all regain and maintain our wonder, hope, and inspiration as we look at our ordinary through new and fresh eyes.